Good morning. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Free Press Media Press Inc., an alternative parties books publisher, sponsors this podcast. I'm Andrew Bouchard. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, friends, we have another exciting guest on the podcast. His name is Mike. He's with a party of new ideas, a new political party I discovered. It's called the Free Dominion Political Party. So welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Oh, thank you, Andrew, for having me, and good to be with you.
Mike, we're glad to have you. So let's get started by you kindly giving us an introduction to yourself, a brief biographical sketch.
Sure, yeah. So I'm living here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I've been here, it's hard to believe it's been almost 20 years, but I grew up in Buffalo, and came here, again, my significant other, she was here, so happy to be in Philly, and I teach at a school and so forth, and enjoying that and enjoy the city. And more, of course, to politics is growing up, I didn't have a deep interest in politics, not much at all, quite frankly. But early on, when I first took an interest was after, for those, maybe some of us older folks might remember the World Trade Organization demonstrations that were going on in Seattle.
Yep.
And that caught my interest, yep. But it wasn't till, again, others might remember the Ron Paul presidential campaigns in 2008 and 2012. And he had a bit more of a libertarian, if you will, sort of, say streak, but, position or leaning. And for a number of us, we just took an interest in it, and it really motivated me to put my hat in the ring and just get some ideas out there regarding, hopefully some answers to some of the issues out there. And that's really where the Free Dominion Political Party started, actually.
Cool. So,
yep.
You said you're a teacher. Is it in the social science or philosophy or something like that?
Yeah, I wanted this myself because my background, I went to college for music, actually, music composition and theory. And I teach, at a local college, teaching music history and theory and stuff, and art too. So I wondered that myself because, I had really no training in like political science or so on. And I wondered, well, why am I so drawn to this?
Yeah.
And I think part of it is like philosophy because, philosophy deals with ideals, and ideals, can be expressed in ideologies and so forth. And, so I don't want to say it. I don't think that, philosophy gets sort of a short, gets short-handed, so to speak, regarding politics. But it's important, because these are ideas, and it was really one of the things that really was enjoyable to me then when I started the party because it was an independent, organization. I really had the freedom to think of sort of, I felt sort of creative ways to answer these things. And it really led to some interesting things that I felt in terms of my platform. And this was, then going into how it was applied because it was 2015 and it was a city council race here in Philadelphia, and there's 8 districts, and so I was in District 8. And it was really, again, kind of liberating to offer some fresh perspectives on that, I thought. So that was neat.
Sure. So what you were running for city council in, what year was that?
That was 2015. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So what did you learn from running that race? What did you learn about politics, about yourself? What did you learn?
Yeah. Well, I felt one of the things that maybe for other, voters and citizens out there, one of the frustrations when watching debates and so forth is, there's a lot of, and I guess it's just part of the nature of politics because, it's an arena, it's a contest, getting these ideas out there, but just sort of I don't want to say the partisanship, but sort of, that's part of it, but sort of even just sort of the, who likes to see the ugly side of human nature? It's part of reality. There's no getting around that. But one of the things that sort of premised the platform, and I eventually gave it a name. I called it dignitarian philosophy. But if one of the premises of a civil society is innocent until proven guilty, and this is sort of one of the main axioms, if you will, of what the party platform for, or campaign for, was that again, if citizens are innocent until proven guilty, that virtue, that still a virtue, also then should say, to me, it says, well, you have good judgment. Now, we all are, we're human beings, we're fallible, but if citizens have the virtue of good judgment, what it led to, and again, there's debate about this, and I enjoy talking about it, but it led to the platform of letting citizens having some say where their taxes go.
Sure.
So, yeah, so if someone says, I place more value in schools, well, let them have some say to put their money there. Or if someone says, I have value in the armed forces, let them do that. Because, one issue that seems to be kind of resolved by that is, one person can't represent everybody. And if we are in a representational, republic or democracy, there's representation involved, why not let citizens have some say? And then you might actually have less sort of embittered, tension and more actual like authentic satisfaction because someone says, yeah, that bridge over there, I directed my taxes to that, and there's an actual pride involved,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with who Jello Biafra is?
No. Well, the singer from the Dead Kennedys, right?
Yes. He, on one of his spoken words, he talks about something similar. So your idea is a good idea. Smart minds think alike. He called it line item taxation.
Yes. Yeah. And what's nice, I'll be honest, the first time I heard that, but what's so nice to me about that is because, now in the online age, and, this is all on my, because I still have a website, michaelgalgansky.com, and then the Freedom Indian Political Party website's still on Facebook, but, so it's all there, but one of the terms that I use, I guess same idea, but different languages, I call them municipal compacts.
Oh.
And the idea was that, particularly now in the online age, when people do their taxes, and I haven't figured out what percentage, because that's an interesting topic, we could talk about if you like too, but, in the online age, what you might get a tax form and you get a certain percentage and certain options of which chapters, you might look to put your taxes to. So that's the language I use, but it's the same idea, I think.
So here's the question I have about that. I could hear some people saying, then people are going to choose things that are beneficial to them, and yet some things are beneficial to society as a whole that might not be popular if they're not going to choose that. So how would you get around that? Yeah,
that's a good point, because I did hear that, and I'll be honest, this is one I still have yet to resolve. I should just spend more time and do it. But to me, let's say if you have elected officials, to me they would have, I think, properly speaking, more authority because they're an official, they're in office and they've assumed that responsibility of administration. So to me, it wouldn't be like 100%, the citizens doing everything because again,
okay.
Yeah, so it would be sort of, I guess you'd say, regulated to some degree. Maybe it's like 25%, or it could be more. I haven't figured out those exact percentages because I haven't understood the principle, what the percentages should be based. But I think having some, because again, really, to me, you can give credit to, people in office because they've assumed that responsibility. And, we can work on the assumption that, they have maybe legal training, but so it isn't all 100% one or the other, but I think, they would have a good idea. And the other thing that to me is appealing about this though, because let's say if there is corruption in office, and if the virtue again is people have the right to withdraw from abuse, citizens could say, hey, this is being corrupted. I don't want to put my money there, and that might actually give politics, people in office to behave, more ethically. It's a bit more sort of a authentic regulation in that sense, you might say.
Sure.
Yep.
So what else is on the Freedom Indian Political Party platform?
Yeah, so that was a big one. Municipal compacts and basically, again, saying, where your taxes would go. And I think the other thing here, I'm just trying to think, some of the ideals, like part of it was, now this is a big thing here actually too. I call it the virtual compact, but let's say then like the role of citizenship, because you could say if the ideal rather what we're striving for is like conscientious citizens, and because you could say, let's say you have an issue like, let's say in a city there's a lot of litter, unfortunately, and you might have laws that for littering there's a fine, and because who wants trash in their neighborhood? But it's one thing to have a sort of punitive measure, but how do you sort of inspire more conscientious, ethical conduct, without forcing people, in sort of a an oppressive way, you must do this, kind of thing. So kind of the opposite of that. So I call them virtual compacts, and the idea was, and this is more, again, it's philosophical, but there's language out there, but you might be familiar with, there's this phrase out there of the social contract.
Yep.
And, when you think about it, it's an idea, but there's no legal thing, and I wanted to be cautious about this because, again, I didn't want to impose something that was more despotic, But the idea was, let's say as minors, the assumption, again, in a civil society is that parents, guardians are, taking care of their kids.
Yep.
And, hopefully instructing them, ethically and so on. And the idea was once you become an adult at 18, I call it the virtual compact, where it's written out, you recognize there are, which I think maybe we still do. I'm not sure if we do this so much anymore, but there are certain sort of principles that how the society is organized. And when you do that, you, by your own will, you sign to civil society and say, well, I recognize these are the codes that make, of what a citizen does. And if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But, if you want the benefits of a free road, for example, that's paid by taxes and so forth, you can sign, I call it the virtual compact, and then you are acquainted with these are the codes of conduct that, we really, how the society sort of works on. And so then it kind of goes back to, well, because there are some out there who say, well, nobody should pay taxes.
Yeah.
And to me that it sort of reinforces the ethic. Well, if citizens are expecting quote unquote free roads or other sort of benefits, people still have we could say the prerogative to distribute where, but under this compact, people do have to recognize that they have to contribute, and that might depend on people, because let's say, someone who might be handicapped, for example, it's not the same degree, that an normal, able person can contribute, but recognizing those things hopefully inspires more conscientious conduct instead of, forcing things like, you must buy a certain type of car or something because we believe there's, emissions or something. It's less about that and more about, how do you foster, encourage consciousness without, violating people to try and make someone do something.
Sure.
Yeah.
So does the Free Dominion Party have any ideas about election reform?
I'll be honest, because that was in 2015, so, lots has gone on, of course, since then, and I'll be honest, that is something I haven't really dealt with as much. I know it's become more of an issue, in recent presidential elections and so forth, but, yeah, and it's important, but, yeah, I haven't really dealt with that, and maybe I think about it, but I haven't sat down to sort of commit to come up with a dignitarian perspective on that.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So what type of people are you thinking would like this platform of yours?
Yeah, it was nice because there was I was contacted by several other Philadelphians, and they were lovely people, and so I had someone who became the vice president of the party, and her daughter actually. Yep, she ran for office in another district for city council, and we didn't win. We did okay I guess all things considered. But my point is then that it was good because I think you know it can appeal to anybody because you know you might say, well, why are there two parties and you know why is, for that matter, why are they called left or right?
Yeah.
And you know, if let's say if someone maybe is drawn to one issue or another, which is fine, you know, we all have our own interests, but the ideal was then, well, what's in the middle? If it's principle itself, you know, that is hopefully something we can strive towards. And you could almost say, you know, when two people argue, you know, what is the main point? What are they trying to arrive to? And hopefully, again, it's sort of principle itself, you know. So you know, I certainly, when I ran and I introduced this, there were certainly, you know, critics and skeptics out there. And I think probably, to be honest, like you had pointed out with the one issue, that probably the biggest skepticism was like, well, how do you have people, distribute their money responsibly? But on one hand, too, it's like, it's kind of like, well, it's not my business to tell someone else what to value, you know, and if public officials are assuming the greater responsibility, it can still be done. But I like to think that, you know, that principle itself in the middle can be appealing to any side, really.
Sure. So do you think to implement this would require extra services or extra government agents, or do you think we could do it within the framework we already have?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in terms of, let's say, actual staffing, I think you might need a little less actually, because with this idea of the trust, municipal trust, I call them, you could say, well, you know, if people are having a bit more direct say of where they direct their taxes to, you might not need as many staffers, you know, doing maybe the bookkeeping or so on. I could be wrong on that, but I know for critics out there who say that, you know, the government is too bloated or so on, that might actually be to their appeal, because it might actually sort of reduce some of these, you know, I say chapters that, you know, the big, that's what I'm looking for, just big parts of the government. It might actually, you know, trim some of it down, arguably.
Sure.
Yep.
So do you know of any ideas that this has been tried in practice before, or is it something that hasn't been quite done yet?
Yeah, you know, it was funny because here in Philadelphia, which, you know, maybe many are aware, you know, historically, William Penn came, I guess he was from England, and I forget the exact historical dates and so forth, but he came here to the early colonial days, and and so I should look it up because it's really quite fascinating, because he tried something like that.
Oh.
And yeah, it was very embryonic, if you will. And what happened was, and what I remember, it was a really fascinating story, because I think, yeah, there was some say like the citizens had, I'm trying to think back, it was something like citizens had a say of how much they could give of their taxes. It was kind of a wild thing almost. And
wow.
Because William Penn himself, I think he went away. He was here, and then he wasn't in the colonies much, in the Americas much, you know, as the Pennsylvania became established. But I laugh though, because unfortunately, you know, human nature. I think what happened, there was some kind of administrator who was here in his place, and this administrator. Now, this is the article I read. You know, I don't know if it's one-sided, but this is just what I remember reading. Is that he sort of, you know, human nature sort of veered up, and he became more corrupted, basically. He was demanding more money. He wasn't responsibly, I guess, you know, distributing where the money was to go. So it kind of fell apart, but it was really interesting because it was sort of as I say, an embryonic idea, and it was working, I guess, until you sort of had, you know, this bad actor, if you will, and you know, and that is the reality that, you know, government should, you know, protect, you know, citizens from, but it is part of human nature. So there we go. Yeah. So
if there was some type of way to monitor that, whoever administers that would do it right, that would make it work better, right?
Yeah, and maybe the trust, again, the municipal trust is part of that, because then you're kind of taking some of that out of, officials' hands, because you could even say, in a sense, like let's say if 25% is allowed to citizens to disperse as they see fit, you could say some of the temptation of large, pots of gold, if you will, in the public coffers, they're sort of trimmed down because it's out of their hands. So some of the temptation maybe for, profiting largesse, at the public's expense is sort of removed because there isn't as much of a honeypot, if you will.
Interesting. It's awesome to hear that has historical precedence, because this idea is something I haven't heard about before. So it's good that you have a good idea, and also at the same time, it's something that has some traction. It's been done in a prominent place. Yeah,
and it was neat because I did hear from different people during the campaign, and there was one fellow, I'm trying to find it here, I'm just looking here at my laptop, and maybe I can find it quick, but there was an organization, here it is right here, I think, it was more from, I think it was an economist, I'm going to assume like a young fellow maybe at the time, and we chatted a little bit, and I'll see if I can find it because it's on the Free Dominion, the Facebook page. But yeah, it was the same sort of idea from an economic standpoint about, and the fellow actually gave it a name. Let's see if I can find it here. I'm sorry about that. So there is a few sort of, I guess you might say, theoretical precedents, but yeah, it hasn't been tried. But I think it would be, it would be, you could do it gradually too, because let's say instead of, overnight radical change, it might be something like, citizens might get, like, let's say, for example, three public chapters, let's say the first phase, and let's say it's the Department of Transportation and Armed Forces and Education, for example. And rather than open the whole thing up, it could try as an experiment and say, we're going to try this, and we'll give citizens 10% of the budget, to direct where they want to, and we'll start with 3 chapters. And I think it could be done gradually to test the waters, and see what problems come up. But I think it could be done in a reasonable way.
Okay, so that sounds like it could be done where part of it the citizens control and part of it the others control, like a check and balance. So either way, the citizens don't have too much power, and also so the government, the representatives don't have too much power.
Exactly, yeah. I didn't thought of it that way, but it's a good way to look at it. It's sort of another form of check and balance.
Yes, because I've heard a lot of people say about our founders, though they were against monarchy, they were also against democracy at the most extreme level, because they thought that would be a bad idea too. So they wanted to have checks and balances against democracy. A lot of people these days are democracy, but democracy does have its problems.
Exactly, yeah. And that was the thing, because I remember Ron Paul, that was one thing he mentioned, that, democracy in its worst could be a form of mob rule, because you can have a majority that can be incorrect, on an issue, and so, and to me, philosophically, it was like, well, who is the smallest minority? And to me, that's the conscientious individual. Yeah, and it ties into kind of one other sort of philosophical thing to me that was interesting, because let's say, like, in terms of term limits, if there are sort of I forget what I called it. I called it sort of domains. Scopes of governance, where we talk about the federal government or the state government, but if the smallest minority is the conscientious individual, to me, you could almost kind of draw this pyramid, and that it would sort of answer how maybe some things should be administrated governmentally. But let's say if, like, the federal is the whole country, that's sort of your broadest, and within the federal is the state, and then within the state is the county, for example. Within the county is the township, and then within the county is like your estate, your property maybe, let's say you own a plot of land. Within that is the home, because, we're the masters of our home, right? The Lord of one's home. Yeah. And then you say we also govern ourselves, and then above that is the conscious. And now, to me, I'm admitting I'm a spiritual person. I believe in the Creator and so forth. But if the Creator, if that's where our morals ultimately come from, as a higher God, a higher Creator, to me, it's a natural connection that, this answers some things like, well, abortion or vaccines, because you could also say we govern our bodies, So anyways, there's these sort of levels of governance, and it all kind of gets back to the conscience again. And I just bring it up because to me that is the smallest minority.
Sure, interesting.
Hmm.
So, Mike, where can our audience find the platform of the Freedominion Party?
Yeah, it's on Facebook, Freedominion Political Party, and I still have a website, and I think, maybe down the road I'll get back involved again. I just finished a doctorate degree, actually, in music.
Oh, wow. What was it in?
Yeah, it was comparing music and architecture, and it was comparing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony to the Chrysler Building. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was really neat. It was fun to do, and this was at Temple University here in Philadelphia. So anyways, I've been out of the political loop for a while, but yeah, my name, MichaelGelgansky.com, talks a lot about those things, and again, the Freedominion Political Party on Facebook, it's all there, and who knows, maybe I'll, dip my foot in again, but I was glad to do it, and it was worthwhile, and it was fun, really, to learn a lot. So.
Sure. So, can you spell your last name for us?
Sure. Gelgansky, G-A-L, followed by G-A-N-S-K-I.
Is that Polish?
It is, yeah, on my father's side, yeah. So.
Oh, wow. I have Polish in me, too.
Awesome. Oh, nice, okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so it's at MikeGelansky.com?
Yeah, G-A-L-G-A-N-S-K-I. Michael, MICHAELGALGANSKI.com.
Okay. All right, I can get that in the show notes, God willing. And the Freedominion Political Party, the place to look for that would be where I found you on Facebook, right?
That's right. Yep.
All right, excellent. We always like to hear new ideas here that have a lot of things to think about and ways to organize society for the better.
Absolutely. Well, as I mentioned just before, I really appreciate what you're doing. It's nice, that there's people out there, interested in other parties, of course, out there. And, as you say, hopefully it adds, a good thing to our body politic.
It sounds like it will.
Great.
All right, Mike, we thank you for coming on the podcast today, and we wish you all the best with the Freedominion Political Party, your new doctorate degree, and everything else you do in life.
Oh, great. Likewise, Andrew. Thank you very much.
All right, take care and all the best.
Okay, yep, you too. Yep. Bye-bye.